It's award season.
It is for podcasting.
Podcast award nominations are now open until July 31st.
You can vote Twin Peaks Unwrapped and get us nominated in 2 categories.
The People's Choice and TV and Film.
That's awesome.
That's so cool. So you please visit www.podcastawards.com.
All you have to do is click on the nominations are open banner, sign up, then vote. It is that easy. It will take less than 5 minutes of your time.
You only have until July 31st when they close voting, so please visit podcastawards.com today. Welcome to Twin Peaks Unwrapped. I'm your host, Ben Durant, and beside me is...
Bryon Kazaska.
Hey, Bryon.
Hey, Ben. How's it going?
Going good.
You just had a wonderful trip. Where
Yeah,
did you go?
I went to Ohio. There was this director's series, and it was featuring the Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me film. They got to showing it, and they had Ray Wise and Sheryl Lee there doing a Q&A. I got to go to 3 showings, and you're going to get to listen to the 3 Q&A session that happened.
My pal from Switzerland, and one from Holland. The Netherlands, yes.
Indeed. Has anyone else traveled further than Switzerland and Holland?
Yes. Akron, Cleveland. I'm from Akron. Born and raised in Akron, Ohio. Went to Garfield High School, and then I went to Kent State University. Graduated in 1969, went right to New York, and in a couple of weeks I walked into an open audition at CBS, and I got a soap opera called Love of Life. It was 1970. I did Love of Life for about, am I talking too much? I did Love of Life for about 950 half-hour episodes, and it was the beginning of my career, and it was a great job. And there it was in the 70s, and I was making good dough, and I couldn't believe my luck, you know. And then in 77, I came out to California, and it just continued. The first thing I did was Charlie's Angels, the original Charlie's Angels show, you know. And that's what got me started out here, and I haven't stopped since. For 51 years. And that's almost impossible for somebody who's only 45 years old. This is my partner in crime, Sheryl Lee. My television and my movie daughter, and one of the great loves of my life, and I'm indebted to her forever. And you know, a little story. She gave me a picture of her in the 4th grade, and I put it in my wallet when we did the pilot, and I kept that picture in my back pocket for the entire series. She was with me the whole time. And then I gave the picture back to you. Do you remember? I figured you'd want it back. It's probably the only 4th grade picture she had. I crack her all the time.
I sit up here, Sheryl. It's all good.
It was funny. When I was killing her as Maddie. We laughed just like this. In between takes. Yeah, it was great. But that was the main way to keep our sanity, you know? It was like a great release.
I'm sharing a microphone with Sheryl Lee, my first crush.
He's not lying. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah, I will tell a real brief version of this, but when I was a kid, my mom was cutting my hair, and we were watching the Twin Peaks pilot as it aired in the kitchen on a little black and white TV, and it was the Sunday movie of the week, so I was like, this is going to be crap, Mom, I don't want to watch your Sunday movie of the week. And it turned out to be the pilot of Twin Peaks, and I was hooked, and the moment Agent Cooper was laying on the floor shot, and the old man kept checking on it for 15 minutes, Mom bailed, and I continued and watched this incredible show. So you, to me, getting into film, were what I saw first time I remember seeing acting. And acting to the point where when you lost your daughter, when you said my daughter's dead, I was bawling. I had never had my heart broken, I never had anyone in my family die yet, so it was like my first feeling of like grief was seeing you lose your daughter.
Wow.
I was 9.
9 years old, my goodness.
I'm gonna try not to choke up.
Oh, wow.
No, but and then you're why I wanted to date a cheerleader in high school. But this is not about me. It's about all of you. Thank you so much for coming to this.
Yes, thank you. Well, you made it through the movie, huh? What? I bet it wasn't easy. I know.
A real feel-good flick.
Yeah, we've seen it a few times, and it's funny. You know, when that movie opened in Cannes at the festival, the audience actually booed it.
It's terrible.
Yeah, and David walked out after a few minutes, and the booing continued. And
And tonight we celebrate with cheers.
But then every succeeding year, the movie kept getting better and better. It didn't change, but it kept getting better and better and better. Until now, well, for my money, I think it's one of David's masterpieces. Right? And this girl,
Well, this guy.
what she went through, that was an amazing tour de force, that performance.
Well, I couldn't have done it without
Yeah, we tried to keep it light in between takes, you know. Tried to hug each other a lot and joke a little bit, and and then get back to the serious stuff. We managed to keep our sanity throughout all of it, and we had a great time.
This is happening right now. Just saying.
But now we have to let Sheryl.
you. Oh, now we have questions.
People who aren't used to asking questions, who are shy, don't be shy.
So the one shouting the questions should be the one we pick on, right? Because she's shy. She's pretty
Sure,
shy.
she's good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You.
You said dinner was good. I want to know what you had for dinner.
Chocolate cake.
Yeah, the dinner was really fantastic. And it really got me in the mood anyway.
That was the goal, man.
It worked.
I felt a little song coming on.
I had the... Oh, no.
Oh, yes.
No.
Come on, Sinatra.
No.
Come on, Frankie.
At the dance.
Oh, I really couldn't. Oh, nosy notes and nosy notes and nosy notes, wouldn't you? Oh, nosy notes and nosy notes and little lamsy divey, a kiddly divey too, wouldn't you? Although the words sound queer and funny to your ear, a little bit jumpy and jivey. Say mares eat oats and does eat oats and little lambs eat ivy. Oh, mares eat oats and does eat oats and little lambs eat ivy. A kiddly divey too, wouldn't you? A kiddly divey too, wouldn't you?
How many people are now freaked out by this man?
Yes, I sang that for the first time probably 30 years ago now, and I'm asked to do it at least once a year since then.
All that encouragement we gave you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes.
All right, audience questions, yes.
So I grew up thinking you were one of the best dads.
Next question.
him, I also wanted a wolf as a pet.
Yeah.
And John Cusack to be my boyfriend, and we'd ride the rails together.
Uh-huh.
So then I grew up with that, and then you're like the worst dad. So
I know.
you're not. You're just made. You're a puppet to be the worst dad.
Right.
And my friend Charles and I, we played this game and we watched Twin Peaks. Leland or Bob. And I'm just wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your process, even facially, of when you
When I became Bob?
switched to Bob from.
Well, I never had Bob in my mind. I never thought about Bob.
Okay.
It was always Leland.
So,
And when that little switch went off and he became something else, it was him. And whether it was another part of his brain kicking in or whatever you want to call it, I did not ever think of Bob. Bob was not part of my thinking. Always Leland. And then at the end, the last episode, when I die, I become aware of everything that I've done as Bob. What a big surprise it was for Leland, you know. But it was a wonderful thing. Yes, sir.
So, first of all, welcome both of you to Columbus. Hope you have a good time.
Thank you.
Fans. And question for Sheryl. First of all, I'm a huge Beatles fan as well as a Twin Peaks fan, so I love doing Backbeat.
Thank you.
Now out on Blu-ray, so if you haven't seen it.
I didn't even know that. Thank you.
Getting back to Twin Peaks, one image that's always struck with me is when you do the meanwhile. Was that a specific direction from David? Was that something you did? Does it have any symbolic meaning for you? Or
You know, I wish I could remember that moment more. I am certain that it came from David and David's brilliant mind, and that it means something somewhere very significant. I don't know that I would have ever been given that information, but for me, you know, I always have to translate, even if I don't necessarily know what his meaning of something is. For me to make the moment true, it has to mean something for me, so it did. But that's it. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Yes, sir.
So, working on the series and the movie, how was, I guess, your acting approach on those as far as, did you have way more time to play when you were shooting the film? As far as, dialogue was a lot looser, and with the TV series, you just stick more to the scripts. What was the difference there for you guys personally as actors?
Well, for me, always sticking to the script with David was something that you just do. It's different with different directors, but
Yeah.
it's pretty word for word.
Everything is so, especially the series, and everything is so well constructed by the writers that you really don't want to mess with any of the words, you know. Everything has double, triple meanings, and so if you get a few words off, it screws up the whole mechanism, you know. And so we pretty much stay to the, every once in a while, you know, we toss in a little exclamation, but those are few and far between.
So, as far as like shooting it, did you feel like you moved at the same pace, or did David have more time to play with the film than the episode you directed?
Yeah, I mean, definitely in terms of mood and pace and creativity, the film was very, very different than working on a television show, especially at that time.
Originally, when I met with David, I thought I was going in for the part of the sheriff, Sheriff Truman. And then a couple of days later, when I got the call and said, David wants you to play Leland, I thought, wait a minute, I got to look back at the script and see Leland. He finds out that his daughter is dead and he cries. And then he goes to the morgue and identify his daughter's body and he cries. And then he's up in his daughter's bedroom when they're searching for her diary and he cries. And all this guy does is cry. But therein lies the challenge. I thought I have to show different levels of crying and different types of grief. And then as I started to show them what I could do, they started writing more and more for the outrageous things that Leland did, throwing themselves on the caskets and dancing with himself and all that stuff.
Dancing with myself.
Yeah.
Little Billy Idol in your life right now.
You came into the process as a dead girl, wrapped in plastic, right? And that you thought at the time that was going to be it, right?
Yeah, just like 4 days as a body.
4 days is a lovely body, I have to say, and you were wonderful in that plastic. But in Fire Walk with Me, she was absolutely amazing.
Well, look who I got to dance with.
She did everything that an actress can imaginably do. She ran the whole gamut of emotions. It was amazing to watch her.
I had a good teacher.
You could tell we get along.
Yes.
One, I love you both. I just want to say that.
Oh, thanks.
And this question is for Sheryl. Sheryl, I'm a fan of both Twin Peaks and One Tree Hill. And you play very traumatic roles. Like, you deal with very heavy roles, it seems like. So how do you deal with that? How do you prepare for that?
Well, I don't have necessarily one way of preparing for every single thing, but I do love research. I always have, so I love that part of the creative process. To get to dive into worlds that I may not get to experience in my everyday life. So I do extensive research, and but that's both internal and external. And sometimes for characters it's more internal, and sometimes for characters it's more external, or sometimes I start outside and work in, and then sometimes I start inside and work out, or do both simultaneously. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah. Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So for Ray, in my opinion, you were criminally underused in Twin Peaks season 3. Did you have a discussion with David about that?
I was criminally underused in season 3. That's a wonderful way of putting it. I feel the same way. I wanted to be in it more. We heard rumors, that David was going to do another season, and then one day I got a call on my home phone, and I wasn't there to answer it, and it was on the machine, and then I played the message, and it went, "Hello, Ray. David Lynch here. How you doing? Hope you're doing great." And then he went on to say that he was going to get back to me or to call him back. So I called him back, and he said, "We're going to do season 3, and that I would be in it." And I thought, oh boy, this is going to be something. It was something for everybody else, but not for me. I thought when we did the Between Two Worlds thing, I thought it would be more of that. That we would go in this world, and then the real world, and then that world, and then I had another brilliant idea. I said, maybe Leland has a twin brother, Leonard. Leonard Palmer. Why not? Give him a little bald spot, maybe a mustache. Nah, he wouldn't go for it. I think it was Mark Frost that ruined that idea. Anyway, I felt I enjoyed season 3, and I thought it was visually stunning. She was excellent in it again, and I was happy the way it ended up at the Palmer house. I missed you. Oh, thank you. I missed you too.
My question is for both of you. So throughout the entire process, movie and TV series, what was your least favorite thing about doing Twin Peaks, and why?
I don't know that I had a least favorite thing. Maybe the little dressing room. The honey wagon dressing rooms. But we all shared the same kind of dressing room, so nobody was really special except for Kyle. He had his own trailer.
This is for the past 35 years.
Sure.
The whole thing. I have one. It's thinking about my parents and knowing that they. Now, because I'm a parent, sorry, I'm hitting my mic everywhere. I forgot that I have more than one mic. As a parent, I can only imagine what that would feel like to see, even though you would know that it's acting and you know that it's pretend, and they've met David, and David is so nice and loving to them and warm to the people that he meets, and they knew that I wanted to act, and so they were supportive of all of us kids creatively, but I still just have a hard time with that part of it, knowing that the image of their daughter. Why is my mic? Is this my voice?
I'm just hearing feedback in front. Try raise. It might have
Is this better?
Yeah.
God, I was like, I am losing my mind. I'm hearing these other voices in my head. Okay. So, yes, knowing that image of their daughter dead, even though it's not their daughter, but still in their mind as a parent, that for me, of everything, that was the hardest. Is just my heart going out to them and family members.
To get back to your question, I didn't want to be the killer, I did not want it to be me. I said, if it can be anybody else. Ben Horn looks good to me, To be anybody else, but not me, please. Okay. I had my own little baby daughter. She was like 2 years old at the time. And the whole idea of being the murderer of my daughter on the show was just didn't sit right with me. In fact, I had some bad nights thinking about it, and at one point, I even considered not doing it, not doing the show, the reveal show. It was the day before we actually shot the reveal scene. I look in the mirror and I see Bob, and then I put my rubber glove, and then Maddie comes in, and I take her all the way back to Missoula, Montana, and smash her face into that picture on the wall, and then beat her to death, and that kind of thing. Actually, she was beaten to death by 3 different people that day, by Richard Beamer, who played Ben Horn, by me, and by Frank Silva, who played Bob. Because David didn't want anybody to know who the killer was, not even the crew. So this poor girl, 16 hours of getting beaten to death by 3 different guys. How was that for you that day?
The thing is, those days, it's a tricky thing because it has to be choreographed for safety and stunts and everything just so perfectly. And I was working with such great actors that I knew I was in really good hands. So you have the whole technical part of it that has to be sort of hit exactly. And then this emotion with it. And your adrenaline carries you through those days. It's not until the next day when you try to get out of bed and you can't that you realize, wow, that was a doozy. But just being in such good hands is
yeah. If you ever want to be killed on camera, I'm the go-to guy. Didn't actually hit her, It was a close-up shot of me, and I was punching a pillow, actually, but it sure looked like I was hitting her.
So if Richard Beamer killed you that day too, was it actually like Ben Horn in a different situation rather than the living room of the Palmer house by...
No, it was exactly the way
Okay, it was
It
just
was done the
they
same
just
way every
switched
time
it
with a
out.
different
Okay.
person, yeah. We all went through the same action.
Oh.
Yeah, they all pushed her face into the wall, and yeah, and they all punched her when she was on the couch, and yeah, we all did the same stuff.
I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
oh, where's that footage?
Neither one of them really did it with as much ferocity as I did.
Of course not. Of course not.
But that's just me tooting my own horn. I do that a lot at home, but mostly at home. And it doesn't impress my wife at all, or my 2 kids.
Do you want to finish your brown room story with the one?
Oh yeah. So anyway, I get called into this room. David wants to talk to me. I get called into this room, and I see in this room Sheryl Lee sitting there with Mark Frost, Richard Beamer, who played Ben Horn, David Lynch. They're all sitting cross-legged on the floor. This dark room,
Because there's no furniture.
devoid of furniture, except for this
Waterfall clock lamp.
a waterfall clock, kind of a lava lamp, kind of a thingy in the corner. And so I got down cross-legged like everybody else. And David leaned over, he put his hand on my knee and he said, "Ray, it's you. It was always you." And I thought, no, it cannot be me. I believe I said S-H-I-T out loud at that moment. And then he proceeded to say, "But Ray, it's going to be a beautiful thing." And he went on to explain how it was going to happen and how I was going to die. And I would die in the arms of Cooper, and he would be reciting the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And I would be looking down a long, terrible tunnel. And at the end of that tunnel would be a white light. And standing in that white light would be my daughter, Laura. And she would have her arms out to me, and she would forgive me. I get weird every time I even talk about it. But I felt relieved. I felt a great weight had been taken off my chest, because I didn't want to be the killer. But he made it somehow palatable for me. And I said, okay, let's do it, man, let's go. Gun ho. And it was a memorable episode. Tim Hunter directed it, and the water was sprinkling down on me, and Kyle was great, and it was redeeming for me as a human being, not only as an actor. And so it made it all right. And then I was glad to leave the show. No, I wasn't. I was never glad to leave the show. I didn't want to leave town. I love these people. But I had to. Came back in the last episode with white contacts and acting very strangely. But I was grateful for it, you know. Anybody have any questions?
Hey guys, Sheryl, this is a question more for you. Throughout the show, I was enjoying the show, Laura's, the ghost. She's always around, but she's not there. The movie is the first time we actually get to see her inhabit the body and such. And she's always a victim, and she's presented as a victim. And finally we see her at the end of the film kind of take some agency for herself and do something about her situation. Whether it's finding out who Bob is or putting on the ring and just making that decision. So can you just kind of speak on how you view Laura at the end and just where she is taking her own, sort of determination as opposed to just letting everything else happen to her?
I don't know that I can actually answer that question because it requires me to view Laura from an outside objective perspective as if I don't know her from the inside. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how to do that because I know her from the inside because of her being a part of my life for so long. So my experience on the inside was that primal part of us that has to that no matter how bad it gets on the outside, there is something that wants to survive. That is grasping for air and breath and life force.
Kind of to touch on that a little bit, but Twin Peaks, when it came out, it was more of an art piece. When TV was safe, how did you guys prepare going into that, knowing, or not, maybe not knowing, and having David Lynch direct you into a direction that wasn't what American TV viewers were used to, right? How did you guys approach that?
Well, for me, it was totally easy because I had never done anything before in television or film. My training was in theater, so I had no reference point. So all of it was new, and I didn't know anything. I just was in the presence of great teachers like Ray and Grace and David. And
We had no idea really how it was going to be perceived by an audience. We just knew that as we were doing the pilot, we knew that it was good writing, great characters, and we were doing good work. But how it would be taken, we had no idea. And I remember we went to see a screening of the pilot, and we thought, pretty good, different. Yeah, but I don't know. It's on ABC, That's unheard of, really, actually. We did things on that show that they're barely doing today, and on a major network at that time. It's amazing that it ever got on the air, but it did because of the strength of force of its own being. It had to come out. But they were forced to put it on the air because everybody liked that pilot so much. And once it was, everybody responded to it and it had to go on. It never, David never wanted it to be solved, the murder of Laura Palmer. He wanted it to go on and on and on. And ABC, that time it was owned and operated by Capital Cities, and I don't think they liked the show really from the get-go. But that's the way big corporations are sometimes, and they don't care what I think, but I'll always think that they messed up and they screwed up a good thing, because we could have kept it going for a few years anyway. And we could have hit everybody in that town, and you could have found out everything about them that you'll ever want to find out, and we just sort of missed the boat on that one. And then David hadn't had his fill of it, so he wanted to do Fire Walk with me, and we were very happy to come back.
Hi, welcome to Ohio. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Great work. Obviously, everyone feels the same way. But was David Lynch transparent with you about your roles, or did it kind of develop, or were you kept in the dark at any moment?
I feel like I'm always in the dark with him, but the dark is not a bad place to be. It's the place of mystery, and it's the place of living in the question and having the courage to live in the unknown. And I love that. And I greatly appreciate his courage to sit still in that place.
Very well put. Yeah, I feel the same way. Yeah. We're flying by the seat of our pants a lot of the time, and never knowing what was going to happen the next day, as it is in real life. Our characters never knew what was going to happen, so we just blithely moved along, and we'd look at the page and say, I have to do this, so I'll do it. And it was a wild experience.
Sheryl, what was it like playing Laura Palmer in the show, or Maddie, I guess, mostly, the live version of you. But once the series came to a close and you kind of put those characters to bed, when the script was presented to you, or the opportunity to make Fire Walk with Me, what was your initial thought on if you wanted to revisit the character, or your process on okay, now I'm going back to something I never thought I'd be playing alive, how was that transition? Just kind of just your decision on that, and kind of putting yourself in that space again, but to approach the character as a live version.
Well, I I can't remember exactly when I first saw a script, but I remember having conversations with David and coffee with David after the series was over, that he was sort of chewing on this idea of the film. And as an actor, when you finish a role, usually there's a sort of closure circle. It's like, okay, this feels finished now. But I never ever felt that with Laura, even though I had only really been hired to play Laura for such a short time, but I could feel that character's life force. And so it was a great relief in a way to have, it felt as if she needed to express more and hadn't been given the space to have that voice. And so it was this feeling of like full cellular relief and release to be able to give life to her and let her have her full circle.
Awesome.
First of all, do you guys have any Ohio productions?
Do you have any Ohio productions, right?
Connections!
Do you have any Ohio connections?
Do I have any Ohio connections?
Columbus connections.
Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, I do. Yeah, I was here in 1967, way back when. I was an apprentice actor at Kenley Players. That was at Veterans Memorial Auditorium, I think it was. Yeah, and for a whole summer, and that's where I started developing my chops as an actor, and I played small parts. I was in Philadelphia Story with George Hamilton, and On a Clear Day You Can See Forever with Shirley Jones, and playing small parts, and Barefoot in the Park with Jessica Walter and George Maharis, and I played the Lord and Taylor delivery man. This guy who was about 90 years old, and I was 20, I think, at the time. A lot of heavy makeup. And that sort of got me started, yeah.
No. You guys are it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A couple of questions. First one for Laura. When they brought back the series, 25
Laura?
Come on, man.
She sometimes goes by Sheryl.
You're gonna get that.
See, I didn't even, it didn't even occur, I didn't even catch that wasn't my name.
After they brought back the show, the 25 years later, did that bring closure to the character for you? Because obviously it did for me.
I want to make sure that I heard your question correctly.
I heard you say that the character Laura, it was hard to put the character to rest. So I'm curious, when they brought back the 25 years later, did that bring closure to the character more in the sense of that?
God, that is a very complex question that I feel like I should have an easy answer for, and yet I have a very complex answer for that question that I don't even have words for yet. Because time, now that I'm older, is much stranger to me. Because even in life, I feel like time keeps circling back on itself. And so then working with David supports that, that time keeps circling back on itself. So I'm sitting in a different place with what closure is and what closure looks like now at 52 than I was at 22 or 23. That I so did not answer your question. I'm sorry.
See what happens? See what happens?
Cheryl, I have a follow-up question. I used to be a social worker, and I would get like secondary trauma from like hearing things from other people. Did you carry any of that like with you outside of your work? Because it's like super traumatic stuff going on. Did you like leave that with any trauma that you had to deal with?
Well, first off, thank you for your social work. When you learn to be an actor, nobody teaches you how to let go of stuff. And I feel like that's a really important part that should be taught. So I kind of had to learn on my own. And I had a wonderful doctor one time say to me, you have to remember the only part of you that knows that you're acting is your mind. So your physical body, if you're in a state of sadness and you're crying, or if you're in a state of fear, those chemicals in your body are releasing as if you really are in a state of danger or fear or sadness. So I appreciate the thoughtfulness of your question. I've learned over the years how, just by trial and error and by learning the hard way most of the time, how to manage that when working. But I did not know how to do that as a youngster. Yeah, I wish it was just taught more in our culture everywhere, not just actors, but there's so much trauma now from so many different things that.
Yeah, and when I did Twin Peaks, I'd already had about 30 years under my belt of playing bad guys and good guys and outrageous guys and of every ilk, and so I was able to leave that all in the studio and drive home to my house in the Valley in Glendale and just be a dad and a husband, you know, and then I would next day come to the studio and be that person all over again. But I was able to leave it and shuck it off. Yeah.
So there's a lot of scenes, a lot of great scenes with the two of you that are super tense, where you're both maybe lying to each other, or like when you're in the car and you get pulled over by the mechanics and you're.
Oh, that's my favorite scene in the whole movie. That sequence is my favorite in the whole film.
I want to know what it's like to ramp up to that, that character action, and then what it's like after they say cut, because you're both almost shaking with this internal trauma.
It was really an intense scene, and it took all day to shoot that scene. And I remember one of the few times I've ever seen David short-tempered was at getting towards the end of doing that scene, shooting that whole sequence, and he became a little short-tempered and a little disturbed, and I think you never hear him yell, but you could tell that he was a little bit angry at. I'm not exactly sure angry at who. I think it was a crew member. It wasn't any of us. But yeah, that was a very intense scene, and then when David would describe to us how it would go into flashbacks of going into the motel and all of that, and he wanted to see that register on my eyeballs. I had to create that whole thing in my head, imagining it and seeing it for myself. Because the camera don't lie. It gets right in your eyes, and if you're not thinking the right stuff, it sees it. That's why there has to be truth in acting, and so I felt that it's always easiest to be thinking the right thought at the right moment, because then your eyes and everything else follows, and your nose, your lips, everything. Does that make sense?
I've been a part of an online community of fans of media arts for the last 15 years or so, and they are all jealous that I'm here because we've always held up Twin Peaks as one of the great works. And in particular, the third season just, in our opinion, lives at the masterpiece. So the question they want me to ask is from that, and they want me to ask Sheryl, is Carrie Page Laura Palmer?
Do you really think I'm allowed to answer that question?
I don't think so, but they wanted me to ask it anyway.
Tell them thank you for the question. And I'm way more interested in what they think than what I think.
I think that's what they think, which is why I was asking.
And David would say the same thing. You know, whatever you think it is, that's what it is.
I was just in LA a month ago, and David was there speaking on stage, and they asked him. They said, "They just tried to get anything out of him." They're like, "In Blue Velvet, working with Angelo's music, was there ever a moment where Angelo's music just fell into place, and you just felt like this is it, and this is why I have him, and this is right with this scene, and everything is right with the world?" And David's like, "No." And that was the only question mentioned about his film.
A funny story. Angelo Badalamenti, the great composer who wrote the music, he has a funny story and a true story. Paul McCartney got in touch with him, during the run of the series, and he wanted to do some music with Angelo, and so he flew him over to Apple Studio in London, and Angelo tells this story that McCartney told him. McCartney went to Buckingham Palace to play some new music for the Queen and her husband, and he was in the reception line, and she was going down the line, and she got to Paul McCartney, and he said, "Your Majesty, I have some new music I'd like to play for you." And she said, "Well, it's 10 minutes to 9, and Twin Peaks is going to be on." We're going to go upstairs, and then after we'll come down, and you can play the music. True story. The Queen of England went up to watch Twin Peaks. Put Paul McCartney on hold.
Yeah, this question is for Sheryl. So it seems like throughout the series there's a lot of focus on visions and dream work. So I'm curious if the cast or any individuals in the cast who are doing their own dream work or continue to do their own dream work and discuss that together to this day.
I do my own dream work for my roles, just myself. And for me, it's a little bit like learning a foreign language. You know how they say when you're learning a foreign language, if you dream in the foreign language, then you're integrating it. So there's usually some point before I start working where I have a character dream, and that always helps me. It's always like a good affirming thing for me, like, okay, I am getting rooted in this character's life. And then sometimes I'll continue to have them. When I was playing Laura, I had Laura dreams all the time. And even if they were a lot of them were very, very disturbing, but it helped me know that I was where I needed to be. But I never discussed them with anyone, not even David. Did you have any dreams?
I had no dreams. What I had to do on camera was enough for me. I didn't have any dreams of that kind. And you talked about 25 years later. I was actually very disappointed 25 years later because I was hardly in season 3. And I had thought perhaps David could have you integrated me a little more into the story than he did. I thought it'd be between two worlds, We'd go back and forth a little bit, and I never anticipated Las Vegas. But I did have a line, and I did have to say it backwards. And then they played a couple of clips from the television series, from Fire Walk with Me. Yeah. And that was it. That was the extent of it. And that's my only criticism of the 3rd season. That I was not in it more.
In the back.
She missed me.
I missed him.
One question, but 25 years later made me think of something else as well. When he made the series and Laura said that, are you see in 25 years? What did he say about that? Did anyone have any sense?
Nothing. That was just the line.
What was the question?
About when originally it was I'll see you in 25 years. Was there anything else said? Correct? Is that yeah? Other than just the line, and there wasn't. Not that I remember.
Yeah, this is a Laura Palmer question, but Sheryl or Ray can answer it if they want it. Towards the end of part 18 on the return, Laura, when Coop and Laura are together, she looks back and it's revealed that Cooper was the one in the bushes when James and Laura were there earlier in this movie. Did you know in filming this that it was Cooper in the bushes, or what did you think was in the bushes?
Yeah, Cooper's always in the bushes. You bug the shit out of me.
Cooper was in the bushes?
Oh no.
Season 3. The one that just happened?
Or did it?
Yeah, you're on James.
Season 3, you know, the one that was
What
hardly
year is
in.
it? What year is it?
Cooper jumped back in time to save you.
Oh, those bushes.
Did you know that he was in the bushes?
I wish you had a mic. Can you stand up and talk and yell at me so I can hear you?
Okay, at the end of part 18, in the return.
Yeah, the one that just happened.
When you are going back in time with Cooper and eventually end up in the Odessa dimension or whatever, it's revealed that Cooper was in the bushes.
Did I know that Cooper was in the bushes? Wait, yeah, but here's the thing. This is where it gets really complicated. Did I, Sheryl, know Cooper was in the bushes? Or did I, Laura, know Cooper was in the bushes? Did I, Laura, from the present or the past? Or did I, Carrie? Or did Carrie Page know Cooper was in the bushes?
What year is it?
This is what my life is like, guys. I'm gonna do some research on that question and get back to you.
So what did you think was in the screen at?
What did I think I was screaming at?
Yeah.
So many things.
David Lynch answer. No.
Kind of going back to the scenes where you killed Maddie.
Mm.
It's like one of the most violent things I've ever seen on television, and I don't think ABC would air anything like that now.
No, they would not, no.
What did ABC, cut anything to, can't have this much blood, or you can't hit her that...
No, they couldn't because Mark Frost and David Lynch had an agreement with them that they're hands off. That's why a lot of the stuff got on the air. That should have maybe gotten on the air. Hands off, or else we're not going to do the series. We're not going to do it. And so they were forced. They were forced by gunshot. That they couldn't stop us from doing that kind of thing. And that's why. But then they fired the gun and ended us. And ABC never liked the show. I hate to say that, because I work for ABC now on a show called Fresh Off the Boat, where I played one of Orlando's 100 greatest dentists. But ABC never really, they were owned and operated by capital cities at the time, and they were not fans of the show. So they realized they had to keep it on because everybody wanted to keep it on. But they did all they could to try and not torpedo it.
Maybe did it Thursday to Saturday, and
Yeah, they kept changing around the schedule, and they kept, pestering David and Mark to end the murder mystery, get it over with. Let's find somebody who killed her, get it over with. David never wanted to get it over with.
it was hard to find y'all back then. There was no internet, so they were, I'm like, I want to see my show, and I'd have to go find you guys. So
Yeah,
really
I know. It was difficult. Not, today we wouldn't have that problem. We'd be streaming somewhere,
Question for Sheryl Lee.
So great to be here. Thank you guys for coming. I've always been really enamored with the relationship between Laura and Donna. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what it was like working with two different actresses for that character. And also how you felt about how that friendship was portrayed. And did that feel real? Were you channeling anything while portraying that?
Well, I loved both Donnas. To me, Donna was Donna, no matter which actress, and I loved working with both actresses. They came into my life at different times, and they each hold a special place in my heart. And I had worked with Moira before Fire Walk With Me, which was just completely synchronistic. I don't even think David knew that when he cast her. So there was some history there, which was really wonderful going in. And, you know, one of the things that I always appreciated, even as a young woman at that time, was that David and Mark were able to write these wonderful, rich characters for women, and that they would even address female friendship in the way that they did, and give it space, and give it breath, and give it room. And so, and that it wasn't one-dimensional. And that always meant a lot to me. Thank you.
Yeah, Larry Flint Boyle's Donna held a special place in my golf bag.
Hence why she had to be recast for Fire Walk With Me.
Terrible, isn't it? I'm sorry. I can't just stop. I can't stop.
I wanted to ask a follow-up question about the bushes.
Are you sure? If you have one question. No, you can ask.
In Sheryl Lee's opinion, at the end of season 3,
The one that just happened.
The one that just happened. The one with the bushes. Happy ending, sad ending, or somewhere in the middle for Laura?
That for me, that's like way, way, way too simple. Meaning, I don't know that true happiness ever comes without understanding the depth of sadness. I don't know that sadness ever comes without experiencing the happiness of love and caring for things. And do you know what I mean? So somewhere in the middle, to me, is sort of flatlined, and I definitely don't think it was flatlined, because I think one of the greatest things that David gives us as a director and also as a storyteller is that he keeps the love and the heart in it, even in the midst of all this other devastation. And so I can't give you an answer that simple.
So I should have asked about the bushes.
What was your guys' reaction to episode 8 of the new season? Where the bomb and 9 Inch Nails and Woodsman and all the fear.
Yeah, that was pretty spectacular, yeah. Visually stunning, mind-boggling, could stand on its own 8th episode, yeah. That was pretty amazing. But again, did not have one drop of meat.
Knowing that things would eventually loop back around to you and Cooper, to Laura and Cooper, what was the experience like for you watching how the show got back around to that through the entire process of that 3rd season?
Okay, but wait a minute.
Yeah.
You're making an assumption that I knew something. What makes you...
I was going to ask that, but I thought that might be jumping the gun.
What were you going to ask?
Oh, I had heard that Kyle was the only one who had the script to the entire 3rd season.
I did not have a full script.
What was your experience like watching the 3rd season, knowing at some point you and Cooper would be a part of that again?
But see, I might not have known that. I had very, very little information. Think about what happens in your mind right now when I say I had very little information. And then multiply that times 1,000,000. That's how much little information I had.
I had even less. I had 1 page of script with 2 words on it, and I had to say it backwards. I thought, why did he have me come back?
What was your experience watching week to week of the 3rd season? Knowing that you were in it in some way.
Well, I didn't know that I was in it. And I mean, I've worked on films that I wasn't in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So we never know whether we're in it or not in it, or what they're going to do. Like, we have to surrender control when we leave work every day. So I knew very little. I knew what I experienced in my life, meaning which days I showed up and what I did on those days that I showed up. I didn't know what order. I had no script. So it was really about being just completely present in the moment on the day when I showed up and doing what David said. But I will say that when I watched it, I would watch almost every episode by myself, but often with Grace on the phone. Grace and I would talk about it. And I would often watch one episode right after another. And to answer the question about 8, I just want to say, because I had been teaching, and so watching 8 for me, as an elder, I was so grateful that David was giving and offering younger generations a reference point that was so far beyond the normal reference point, the normal boundary that they had witnessed on television, that he just like knocked that down and said, this is what you can do with this medium. I mean, it was like, what, 20, 25 minutes with no dialogue? I was just literally doing a happy dance in front of the TV about that. Just that, even that. And the visuals and the sound and what he does with sound and music and everything, and the actors. And so I was just really grateful that it got to be shared with up-and-coming generations.
So this is kind of a two-pronged thing. One is just a comment that's more so like, hey everybody, what do you think about this? The other one is more so like directed at you. What does everybody think about the fact that Harry Truman is a character in Twin Peaks, but Harry S. Truman dropped the atomic bomb in reference to episode 8 of the new season? And also, what do you all think about the like overarching theme of trauma in Twin Peaks, and the fact that Lynch is referencing the trauma of dropping the atomic bomb interspliced into like the trauma of Laura Palmer's character and like abuse en masse, I guess?
Well, the simple answer is every single thing is connected.
I got real problems with Harry Truman. Dropping the atomic bomb on Japan. I've got real problems with that. But that's for another. We'll save that for another.
But you know what I mean about the everything's connected, that they say a butterfly flaps its wings on one side of the earth and the butterfly's on the other side. Feel it? Like, we can't have a conversation about trauma as individuals without also having a conversation about the trauma of the whole planet.
My question is for Sheryl. What was it like to have lived with the fate of your character for 25 years and to revisit your character in The Return and ultimately change that fate, and more specifically that scene in the bushes? Were you aware that you were shooting in the location of Sparkwood 21 and that you were playing a younger Laura Palmer? What was it like to go back in time?
It's very challenging to find words for, because I was very aware that I think I was 50 when we did the return, and that I had been 21 or something. And I just did a lot of introspective work about time and what is time and what does time mean. And being in that energy of David's circle of time does very strange things to one. And sort of being a part of that process and also witnessing what was going on in my life around that time that we were filming also, it's almost like that period, that year of my life that we shot The Return, I kind of put in a little box and put at the back of a closet, because it's something that I really, really need to take out when I have more time and open and really process through it, because it was so trippy. And it was emotional, and it was nostalgic, and it was melancholy, and it was, there were tears, and it was beautiful, and it was heartbreaking, and it was, we had lost, we've lost people as humans, and we've lost actors, and so there were so many things that it deserves time to process. And I haven't carved out that time yet, or maybe I'm too scared to carve out that time. But I promise I will process through that. Thank you.
At least she had something in her box. I had nothing in my box.
Was it like was it a fortune cookie and then it just read "Find Laura"?
Well, Peggy was a beautiful human being, and a wonderful person to know and to be around. She was she was a very spiritual lady, and a very fine actress, and missed her, and missed Jack Nance. The original, she's wrapped in plastic. And poor old Jack.
And Catherine also.
Catherine Lovelady,
For me, Catherine and Peggy had a similar bright light that just seemed like it could never possibly go out.
Well, we were a pretty close bunch, we really were.
So, what I'm curious about is that you seem to be this lucky soul, and you were playing this character when you were very young, and you did it in such a way that you were very vulnerable, but you were also had this controlling factor, and I was just very curious, what did you draw upon, because I'm assuming you weren't raped by your dad, and you know what I'm saying?
Well, I did extensive research, especially once I knew that we were going to do the film. And I also was in brilliant hands with David as a director. And I had genius people playing my parents, Grace and Ray.
Yeah, but you did.
Well,
just nasty, sexy, and vulnerable, and just amazing.
Well, I need to also give credit to people who wrote wonderful, complex female characters at a time when, as a woman, to be even able to read a script that has a female character that is that complex and that layered and has that many sides to her, that is a gift, just to even get to read a script like that, because they're not as common as we wish they were. When I played Laura, I knew her story. I knew her story inside and out, and like I said, did extensive research. But as I've gotten older, now 3 decades older and a parent, and the thing that has, I don't know that it's changed as that it's deepened and expanded in me, is my heartbreak of how often Laura's story happens in real life every single day to so many people. And I don't understand how those statistics from 30 years ago to now have not gone down. And that's a question for our whole world.
Sheryl, so your character ends up having like 2 fates. There's the one in this where she's killed by her father, right? And then there's the one at the end of the return where like Cooper goes back and stops her from being killed and she turns into Carrie Page. Which of those 2 do you think is the best like send off for that character?
But did you just say she turned into Carrie Page?
Sort of, yeah.
Sort of, right? Is that what happened?
We
They
don't
call
know.
her that.
I mean, I don't know. Do you know?
No, I don't. That's what it seemed like. I don't know.
This is what I love about it, is getting to hear what you guys think. What I think the story is might be completely different than what David thinks the story is, and what you think the story is, and what he thinks the story is, and what he thinks the story is. And I think that's one of the coolest things about David. And that it may change. I may change my mind like 7 more times.
Sheryl, I have watched your other movies, Bliss, Winter's Bone, some other things, and I have a question. How much did David influence what you chose to do other than David Lynch?
It's hard to know, like, which, it's that thing of which comes first, because I think he always has had a huge impact and influence on me creatively and as an artist, and always will. He's one of my greatest teachers. And working with him in that way was like me getting a degree. I always was looking for complex characters. I always wanted multi-dimensional female characters. Thank you so much. And I always hoped to do something different than I had last done, so that I could grow and learn and stretch out of my comfort zone.
Fire Walk with Me is such an emotional powerhouse, and as I've watched the film over the years, it's just such raw emotion. Is there a particular scene for either of you in that you really felt just like you were lost in the character and you just felt like the emotion coming on you? Because every time I watch it, I'm just more and more entranced by just the level of intensity you provide.
I think that just goes back to what I was saying about working with brilliant actors, just to just watch and listen and respond. Really, acting is just listening and responding and being completely present in the moment, and to be able to be present in the moment with people like Ray and Grace and everyone else that David brought together. I feel like I was always lost in it in a way. It was a living, breathing thing all on its own.
Yeah, and because of that, a lot of it came so easy. It felt like, like our own lives. It felt like second nature. It all just sort of flowed. And I remember when I'm holding her graduation picture and doing a little dance and crying, and then I smack. Grace comes in and I smashed that picture, and I actually cut my thumb for real, and I bled all over that picture. It was one of those real apocalypse now moments, and the whole thing was sort of like that. We had great moments like that just came out. It just flowed,
How did you get involved with Tim and Eric, and how was that experience?
Oh God! I did their show. I did office hugs for them, and I showed how to give a proper office hug. And then, see, Tim and Eric were big fans of Twin Peaks. This is how I got much of my work during the 90s. You know, people, if they didn't give me the job, they at least wanted to meet me, you know. And, a lot of, like Diane Keaton, she directed an episode, but after I was gone. So she was doing this TV movie. So she called me in, you know, to maybe play the father. And she gave the part to Beau Bridges. And I think she just wanted to say, you know, see me and say hello, and that happened quite a few times. But other times, they actually gave me the job, and I was thrilled when that happened.
I was wondering, after being in a David Lynch film, is it hard to recover and get back to normal?
I've definitely not gotten back to normal. If I ever even started at normal.
I just wonder if there's a recovery time.
Yeah, there's a huge recovery time now.
Well, she needed a couple of weeks just to get some sleep, really, actually. Because
It's a very different way of working creatively than working with David and working on this show and working on this character is a different way of working than a lot of other jobs. And so it requires a different part of my brain and a different skill set and a different part of my, like for example, going to work in the Red Room, right? Mm-hmm. That's a very different part of creativity than going to play a doctor on a show. Mm-hmm. So neither one is harder or different or better or worse. It's just very different. So there is just recovery time, but there's recovery time for a lot of jobs too. But yeah.
How I Met Your Mother is a little easier to do, than, and I did do that, and I do Fresh Off the Boat now. It's on ABC now, and you know, David sets a very high bar, and not many movie directors come close to it. There are some, but not many, and he's truly a very remarkable, original individual in all respects. He's a true Renaissance man, and he does his own thing, and he really doesn't care what the rest of the world thinks.
Yeah.
And the fact that you think along his lines thrills him to no end. He's thrilled by it.
What is it about you and your work with Twin Peaks that brings you back to things like this so long after the series aired?
It brings us back to things like this. I think for the adulation, probably. Whenever I start to feel low, I like to come to one of these, and I feel good again. You know, it's good for the ego, believe me. And everyone is so passionate about the show and so knowledgeable, and they know more about Leland than I do sometimes, and it's just great to be in your presence. So it's a treat.
Yeah, I feel like you guys are responsible for keeping it alive for all these decades. And so for us to be able to come and say thank you to you guys, because we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys. It wouldn't have had all this long life if it wasn't for you guys. So we get to say thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
That is so awesome, Ben, that you got to do that, and we get to share this with our audience. I hope everybody appreciates this, because this is something very special. Ben, you had an amazing time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so impressed with Mike McGrainer and like how he put all this together, and I want to thank him and thank Ray Wise and Sheryl Lee for doing this. It was such a special weekend. It was so cool to see friends and hang out with everybody and just get this. It was like, to me, it was like a mini festival. It was like a special thing to be able to get to hang out with everybody and get to see the Q&A, and of course we got to see Firewalk with Me, and they did the missing pieces, and they had all these extra stuff. It was like an all-day event, really. I mean, it really. And this happened 3 times, so it was a crazy weekend.
Ben's tired.
Yes, I'm tired of watching. No, I'm never tired of watching Twin Peaks.
No, but you can't be tired, Ben, because our next show in 2 weeks, the beginning of August, we are going to be dropping one of the biggest episodes we've ever dropped in our life.
Biggest.
Our 200th anniversary special.
What are we still doing this show for? 200.
200.
Wow.
Now we have.
Wow, Bob. Wow.
We have some surprise guests on the show. We will have a surprise co-host on the show. And on top of all that, we will be making some very, very big announcements.
Big announcements. 4 years in the making.
In my head, I just did whatever I had to do to get ready for the next scene. Sometimes it meant I had to go off in a corner, in a dark corner, and just stare at the corner. Get away from everybody and everything. Other times, I could be a little lighter about it and walk around and sing a song. And Leland had a lot of light moments, and he sure loved to sing,
You might need to right now.
Well, no, I really. Oh, now the words sound clear and funny to your ear, a little bit jumpy and jivey. Say mares eat oats and does eat oats and little lambs eat ivy. Oh, mares eat oats and does eat oats and little lambs eat ivy. A kiddly ivy too, wouldn't you? A kiddly ivy too, wouldn't you? And then, of course, I sang.
Getting to know you, getting to know all about you, getting to like you, getting to hope you like me. Haven't you noticed? Suddenly I'm bright and breezy.
Key change.
Because of all the beautiful and new things I'm learning about you day by day.
Twin Peaks has the nicest audience in the world. Yeah!